So, hello everybody. I'm Anu.
I'm Alessandro.
And with my colleague Alessandro, we will have now very interesting format. We will have a fireside chat. So what it means? Let's imagine we are in a cafe. It's of course afternoon and everybody are tired now after the lunch. But let's try to make this environment as cozy as possible for us. Take a coffee, take a water. And let's imagine we are in a cafe and we are also next to fire. So here is fire, it's warm, so it fits very well with this, with the weather today, so that after this short spring, we have winter again. So let's imagine we are here having coffee and having our cafes, espresso macchiatos.
Espresso macchiato, yeah.
And
I brought it.
and let's do it in this way that we are enjoying each other. But let's try to do it also interactively. So if you have any questions in between, so just raise your hand and ask, or so we are sitting, or if you, for example, have feeling that you're losing yourself somewhere in a augmented reality, then just stand up and interrupt and so on. So that is the format. So
I have my espresso macchiato, of course, and actually, when I was taking it outside here, I tried to order it in Estonian. Aga ei räägi eesti keeles, so it was a little bit difficult, but the funny thing is that Luca Silves was there and he spoke to me in Estonian and I panicked for a second. I was like, wait a second, right? And then I thought we were going to have this panel, and one of the things that we were asking ourselves is like, how does this Citiverse work? How does it look like? And when we were talking, we were thinking, no, maybe you have these visors, and you have an automatic translation of what's going on. You can also maybe pay just nodding your head and things like that. This could be a version of like the Citiverse, like a service that you have. But then the point is, would that really make my life better? I'm not sure, because that's cool, I guess. But I came to Tallinn and I stayed for something completely different. I stayed for the cultural and creative community, Club Hall, and like all these places that gave a space for me, an expat, to stay. So the question is, what makes people stay in a city, and who is the Citiverse for? Mm-hmm. And I don't know, maybe you have a different take on this, no? What's important for you in a city, or?
Yes, another question what comes to in my mind is welfare and well-being. So how this city looks like. Mm-hmm. Like another example, what I have personal example or experience is that I recently had car accident. So another car crashed my car, and then I also started reading about statistics. Of course, it's also kind of personal fear. So I don't feel myself anymore secure. I don't want to drive a car anymore, and then also as a regular cyclist, then I also get a kind of feeling of insecurity. But then I also read statistics, and statistics say, for example, that there is an increase of traffic death, for example, in Estonia. So this traffic strategies have set as a goal to have 40 deaths a year, so it's again discursively strange having 40 deaths this year, and instead of this there has been an increase of deaths like 70. So therefore my question is how to make it. So how to use these metaverses and Citiverses to make this city more so that we feel ourselves more secure, and there is higher welfare and well-being, and so considering this feelings of insecurities, but also inequalities, like for example with cycling. So we try to make the cities more sustainable and encourage, for example, more using the bicycles, for example, but there is still huge inequalities. So like, for example, gender inequalities, so females cycling less, or for example, there is also huge difference in connectivity, which town parts are connected, like for example, Kalamaja and Pirita, these are not very well connected, and also those are cycling are those who actually actually can afford real estate, for example, in certain town parts. So still the question raises, so how we can use these Citiverses for making this space better. So I don't know what you think about it. And also the question what raises is what this Citiverse actually mean.
Yeah.
So for us ourselves, we had discussed about it, and this question, also our dear colleagues and audience might have the same questions.
Yeah, well, I will get back to this, and I just wanted to comment on the fact that this is already an example of how different stakeholders, different people have different views on what's important in a city, no? And that's maybe the key point, like, who are we doing this for, and what is it that these people want? Like, you have done a lot of work on inequalities and the relationship between the technology and so on. This morning, Ragnar was saying innovation is political, so is technology, so is the infrastructure. So that's very important to be kept into account. And I think that when it comes to how the Citiverse look like, that's the key point, because quite frankly, at the moment, I'm not so sure how it looks like, because one way that I see very interesting to put this into practice, which is also in line with the survey, the poll that was just run, is the center, the one near Vabaduse-Valjak, where you can, that is also not collaboration, the Finest Center put it together, where you can go and you can give, for those of you maybe don't know it, you put your VR on and you have a way to basically see how a certain intervention in the urban planning would shape the city. And you have a way of experiencing it, which is not just on a piece of paper, but it's actually, you can see it in front of you. And I think for me, for example, that's one big way to go when it comes to the Citiverse, because it has a clear benefit for the people, and because it's something that addresses a key point, which is citizens' participation. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, you're the expert on inequalities, and no.
But you're expert of Citiverse, so yeah. You're expert of this practical question. But just following up, so one thing what is interesting here, so how I also understand this Citiverse. It's on one hand, it is really about extending our everyday realities, like in a format of augmented realities, like using the smartphones in, for example, navigating in the city, or for example, as digital twins. So mm-hmm. Like we construct similar digital realms about everyday environment in the city. But the third one, what is also interesting, I think, is exactly this virtual realities. So yeah. Really constructing kind of gamified environments, but it also raises for me the question: what is new, and what is the same? What are these new processes? Of course, so what we have discussed today already is do we need kind of new governance forms, or what Ragnar mentioned in his presentation, or does it change how somehow this multi-stakeholder collaboration, what also Annika emphasized in her talk? But one thing, what I think what is still the same is about data. So as I told, that data is has always meaning. So data are always still about people, and it always has meaning, and therefore it always can include certain power relations. And even if you are using more and more this kind of new data sources and use multimodal machine learning models, like including textual data and visual data in the modal development, and also new approaches like synthetic data, so synthetically producing the data that, of course, gives certain opportunities, like for example, these are more ensure that the privacy and so on, but still raise new questions like this irreplicability. How can we replicate these results and so on? Or, for example, also these power relations that have risen, for example, in Estonian case, in the case of sharing this textual data with Meta, that also turns attention to this non-neutrality. And of course, in city environment or context, we can also ask why it's important here, but still this textual data is one of the biggest data sources nowadays. And then it still also raises the questions about the data sovereignty, especially in the context where great powers in the world are not accepting the neighboring countries' real state sovereignty. So it also raises new questions of inequality. But yes, so it's some questions are the same. This geopolitical questions, but also Lukas Ivles will talk next. But one thing what is also similar is this simplification. So always when we try to use data and based on this data develop these Citiverses and so on, it's always a model. Yeah. And we always lose something, even if we try to include the preferences of the data subjects and vulnerable groups and so on. So it's still always simplification and model-like. Also, this espresso macchiato, it's also model, so it's like I think it's espresso macchiato, but it's just a water. So it's also kind of about representations. What are these representations and meanings? What we inscribe to data. Yeah. But I don't know. You told about this multiple stakeholders and this governance models. I don't know what do you think. What it means for the local government exactly? Do we need some new models, or how do you?
I think there's a question to be asked. Of course, it's different for every city, and every country and so on. But there's a question to be asked if we are really bringing to the table the people that should be there, and if we're missing out on anyone. For example, we were just discussing a few weeks ago a new Horizon proposal on how technology is impacting the cultural heritage and culture. And there's sort of this focus of virtual worlds. And there was a discussion on culture in Europe and resilience and so on. And there, the point that we were discussing is the fact that you should not only consider how the people that will join the virtual worlds will change their ways of interacting and shaping culture and services and so on, but also who cannot access the virtual worlds. Not everyone will be able to access it, and those who will be able to access it will not be able to contribute to it in the same way, because this is also the basics of citizens' participation, depends on my background, on my resources, on many things, on my motivation. And these are critical questions, and I think that if they were critical until now they are even more. Because these technologies or overall infrastructure that we are developing has the potential to bring more people together. For example, during COVID with virtual worlds, you could still be in contact and see your friends, potentially. But it has also the potential of creating more inequalities. And so right now it's very critical. And they would put this in the global context. It's just between friends, so don't quote me on this, but I think Europe really needs to step up on a vision for virtual worlds that is not just a way that people will use to escape reality and as a placebo, but something that actually solves the problems that we have in the real world. Otherwise, why are we doing it?
Yes, I think it's really fascinating thing what you mentioned here is it's really on the one hand we are reproducing the inequalities, but also there might emerge new inequalities. But it's finding a balance between this moral panic on the one hand and this efficiency and welfare and so on. But one thing what I was thinking about is that what you mentioned was really interesting is this new model. So we are in previous panel there was also discussion about this. Shift from this service-based governance models to this human-based and so on. And of course, there is difficult to find these ways, these middle ways and functioning ways from this bottom-up and top-down and so on. And excellent examples from the world, like these data cooperatives and the data commons that mean that citizens themselves build up this kind of platforms and also platforms and also practices and regularities to collect the data and share the data. Although in different countries it might have different meanings, like for example like in Greece context, this data cooperatives, it's very fancy thing, but in Estonian context it has this kind of negative connotation. But so on one hand it's really about this kind of models. So what are these models? But I don't know, what do you think? Your expert from City Council, do we need kind of new skills or literacies? So how do you do it so that it really happens?
I mean, I think in my experience, Estonia is much ahead compared to other countries on this. Already the idea of service design thinking, bringing people, like designing technology and services, putting people at the center. It's taking, I guess a little bit more momentum everywhere around Europe, but it's still a lot ticking the box of maybe the project or the funding that you're applying to versus bringing it into your mentality. We were discussing before at lunch with a colleague on bringing in a design approach. Design meaning curating the interactions that you have. And this is something that I think it's a key competency that is not so widespread, and that the public sector, public servants should take on more than others. Because at the end of the day, if I'm developing a private service or a product, maybe you want to buy it or you don't want to buy it, it's, whatever. But when it comes to the public services, you have a duty to do that in a way that works for everyone. So I think in Europe, actually, there's a competency framework for public servants that it's missing from the institutions, meaning that universities and researchers, Taltech and others are developing it. There are, I would say, some frameworks, but there's no work at the European level, as, for example, it is on overall digital skills for the citizens. That's, I think, a big gap.
So I think it's one thing what I have seen and experienced myself, and I've also seen in the research, is that as you told, it's on the one hand about so of course it's your view is you're living in Estonia, but it's also in some way outside. So you see this technical and digital advancements. As of course Estonians are sometimes more critical, like saying that it's also part of the national branding and so on. But what I have seen in my research is that, but also from this counseling and practical projects with cities, is that we need new skills, new literacies, like that are at some way also similar with this digital area and big data area, but in the AI area, we still need some kind of new skills, like, for example, on one hand, these kind of technical skills, so how to collect the data, how to share the data, and so on. Then, on the other hand, these kind of reflective skills. So, like we have, like as you told, that there are frameworks, regulatory frameworks, or kind of tick boxing frameworks where we just say that, well, is it anti-discriminatory and so on. So there is need for this kind of reflexive skills. So where we just try to estimate the potential negative or but also positive consequences. But another thing what I've seen in my research myself is that there is in the AI area there is new literacies needed, and that is this kind of communicative or cognitive. So meaning that it's on one hand it's in a simplest way. It's like a prompt, for example, right? Prompts with ChatGPT, for example, and so on. But on the other hand, it's also how we see these AI solutions as others, and also on the other hand, these cognitive aspects, how we perceive, how we feel ourselves. So like, for example, if you're going around with these virtual reality classes, so how do you feel yourself in this space? Is it the same feeling as before? So it's kind of a combination of new literacies.
Yeah, I think, I mean, in a way, when like bringing in so much technology and so advanced, there's more a need for us humans to refocus what we humans do, no? In a way, it's also this idea of introducing digital tools in a workflow, changing the role of humans in that workflow. And this is maybe just at a higher scale, no? I mean, if we have technology doing the tedious things for us, then we should then pay extra attention to the human relations, the human side of innovation, of technology, of services, and so on.
But what are your experiences with this these human-centric approaches? What you have emphasized? So more concretely with this trust, but that has been discussed in previous panel, but also values, because it's quite often about the conflict of values, and then how to make agreements. So what are your experiences with this?
I mean, that, like, let's say on specific level, I think it's very difficult. It's like you're saying, no, it's you need to bring in the people, discuss. You will have trade-offs, you will have different views, and there's no work around that. You have to find a common ground. There's an interesting book about that on communication that says that basically, no matter what the differences are, you will still find a common identity. And they bring in a pretty let's say, harsh example of a doctor having to convince parents to vaccine their kids. And this doctor is approaching this in a very, scientific way. Like, a vaccine is good because of this and that. And obviously, it's not convincing anyone. But when the doctor starts talking about loving their kids, then they find this common ground. They are both parents. And that's what convinces more people to vaccine their kids rather than the scientific explanation. The book is Super Communicators by Charles Twigg. And I think that's basically the point. And just to add one thing, because I love this quote, so I have to say it at this point. Mauro Porcini, the chief design officer from Pepsi, if I'm not mistaken. Anyways, he's a designer. And he wrote a book that is about innovation, but it's nothing about technological or technical innovation. It's just about people. And what he says is that innovation at the end of the day is just about people who love other people and want to make something easier for them, being it their work or a product or anything else. I think that's the point.
I think it's very, very interesting, because what I have seen in our research is also that we have, so what we also started with is what is this welfare, and what is this well-being exactly? And we have studied 3 welfare states comparatively. Estonia has this kind of rather liberal and also welfare state context that, well, these welfare state ideas have not yet been crystallized, and then the corporatist model Germany, and then also Sweden with this equality mode. And there we have seen that I also thought that this people aspect, and there we also saw that there are some values that are more universal across countries and contexts, like, for example, diversity and sustainability. So meaning that these are these kind of questions that always raise when we, for example, move these technologies from one place to another, or, for example, when we just as a team work together. So these are some a bit more universal. On the other hand, what was also interesting is that people value welfare. So it's also about this feeling and loving and well-being and so on. So they rather value in developing these automated solutions and AI-based solutions. They rather value this welfare rather than efficiency. So that is, I think, quite interesting. But to wrap up, so I don't know. So what can we do then? So as you told also that we have on one hand frameworks and so on. So do you have any concrete suggestions in addition, like you mentioned, these literacies and skills and these people's importance of people?
I think creating spaces, not just virtual but also physical, to discuss these things, but not in, I mean, this is of course a format, but not just this format, also spaces in the city where you can have these participative processes, well designed, well curated, and bring the people in that context to discuss these aspects. And then, like we're saying, all these things will come up from the people in terms of what they want, what's important for them, like the poll that we saw. And I think for me, this is like concrete relatively straightforward action that can be taken in any city to address this.
So what I have seen myself is that on the one hand we have these regulatory models and tick boxing and so on, but what we have been trying to do is also to develop this kind of frameworks to support this reflection or reflectivity skills. Like, for example, in this data welfare state project, we also suggested some kind of framework that could be used for estimating concrete projects. Or, for example, in Estonian context, we have published this How to Understand Datafied World book, where we also proposed this kind of small manifesto kind of framework that could be used as a tool for just thinking and reflecting about what is good, so how to do it and so on. But what I have seen myself in this project is that quite often everything starts, as we also started, everything starts with data, and then also in the city level, it quite often starts with very trivial data management plans. So not trivial in this meaning that you always know that it's very, very complex and so on, several pages and so on, but we sometimes don't think about it. And it's also kind of reflection that we make through, is that we just think through how to store the data, how to share, how to develop models based on this. And if we have, and that is also a place where we discuss about values and think how to engage different parties and so on. And if we have done it, then of course it's flexible and we adjust it and so on. But if we have done it, then it's also in some points when we get the data or need to share the data, then it also makes it a little bit easier.
Yeah.
But we have enjoyed ourselves. We hope you have also enjoyed ourselves. And I don't know, so before going to the questions, can we wrap up with some ideas? So I don't know. So I saw two things. Like one is this finding the balance, like between this moral panic and then also this efficiency and welfare and so on. Then maybe this literacies, and then the third one, people, or I don't know.
Yeah, totally agree.
Yeah, I just wanted to say you clearly enjoyed your chat. But we've got one question here from an audience. Are personalized services included in the Citiverse? Does that mean that the city will be more proactive?
They are one of the main selling points, I would say, of the whole idea of virtual worlds and metaverse, so also the Citiverse, is that with advanced technologies that can better follow people and their preferences, from the visors to the smart wearables and so on, you can also personalize services even more.
Thank you. I guess we can take a quick question from our audience. If someone wants to just raise your hand, ask directly. If not, I've got one quick question for you, Alessandro. Since I understand you were also involved in a nightlife, somehow, including Club Hall here, which I think it closed down. So hence my question is that how do you see the nightlife in future Citiverse? It's obviously changing everywhere. Apparently young people don't go out anymore. Is that true?
Yeah. After COVID, especially, younger audiences spend much more time at home. When they go out, they spend less, also because of the economic outlook. So it's very challenging. The nightlife in the Citiverse can be quite interesting, meaning that actually already today there are clubs in the virtual worlds. So there's a documentary on YouTube that you can find if you look up for these keywords. I think it also, which is what we were discussing about now, it also brings back the attention to the value of a physical space, to have these people together with a real human interaction compared to virtual interaction. Although, just to give the other side of the coin, a virtual interaction can make it easier for people that maybe are particularly, now I'm going to simplify, but particularly shy or insecure, to step in this different kind of world, and then maybe they're going to experience it in the real life.
But it also raises, again, questions of data. Like we need data to develop these environments. But on the other hand, people within these environments, they are also, through the activities, produce constantly data. So it also gives opportunities. So it raises the question again about this, what to do to make people ready to donate the data. But yes, it also raises these questions about these frictions and what are these consequences, and what is this city that could be created based on this data produced in these environments. What is the future of this city based on these environments?
Yeah. Okay, thank you, Alessandro and Anu. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.